Look at him, frozen in time, a specimen in a glass box. But 3,500 years ago, this was no mere man. The very air vibrated when his name was spoken. He didn't just rule Egypt, he owned the sunrise. He was the first human in history to stare at the blazing horizon and declare without a flicker of doubt, "I am the reason the light returns to your world." To the ancient world, he wasn't a king. He was the living pulse of the universe, the architect of an impossible system designed to cheat the creator, a man who spent his entire life building an unbreachable fortress against the grave itself. This is the story of the Pharaonic Ego, the most audacious lie ever told. The belief that gold could buy eternity, and that a human could be more divine than the heavens themselves. So, where did this staggering madness begin? It started not with a megalomaniac, but with a river, the Nile. In a world defined by chaotic floods and brutal droughts, the Nile was predictable, life-giving, divine. Early tribal leaders in the Fertile Crescent of ancient Egypt didn't just manage the water, they claimed to be the water. They were intermediaries, yes, but soon that wasn't enough. The concept of a pharaoh wasn't born overnight. It was a slow, terrifying theological shift. Early kings simply governed men. But as Egypt unified, as its wealth grew, the distance between ruler and ruled expanded. The priests, eager to legitimize absolute power, declared a new truth. The king was no longer just God's representative. He was God. They moved from being kings of men to the axis of the universe. He became the Pharaohs, the great house, the living embodiment of Horus, the falcon-headed sky god. This wasn't just propaganda. It was the very fabric of their reality for millennia. This delusion wasn't the whim of one man. It was a deeply ingrained system that defined an entire civilization. Once established, the pharaonic court became an engine of mass hypnotism. Every detail, every ritual, every breath was designed to amplify the pharaoh's divinity. He surrounded himself with high priests of the secret chambers, men who mastered not just theology, but chemistry, optics, and the human psyche. They created an aura of invincibility so potent, it felt like physical pressure. To simply enter his presence was to feel the oxygen leave the room, to feel utterly insignificant. When Pharaoh stood on his balcony, draped in linen so fine it looked like woven light, his very existence was a cosmic necessity. He told his people, his voice reverberating through the vast courtyards, "O my people, does not the kingdom of Egypt belong to me, and these rivers flowing beneath me?" He wasn't asking a question. He was stating a law of physics. He had convinced himself and paralyzed millions of others with the belief that if his heart stopped beating, the world would cease to breathe. But even a living God had one undeniable enemy: time. This is why the mummy exists. It wasn't about honoring the dead in a conventional sense. It was a desperate, high-stakes act of spiritual insurrection. The pharaohs believed in a terrifying doctrine. As long as the body remains whole, the soul cannot be summoned for final judgment. Mummification was a technological hack to pause the clock of God. They used natron salts to desiccate the flesh, exotic resins to petrify the skin, turning their bodies into vessels of granite. They believed that by keeping the husk intact on earth, the soul would gradually become more godlike in the unseen world, able to resist divine judgment. They weren't preparing for a peaceful journey to heaven. They were building a second kingdom underground. Their tombs were filled with more than gold: food, wine, furniture, even sacrificed slaves. Believing they could bribe the very guardians of the afterlife, they wanted to live so long, physically and spiritually, that the universe itself would eventually forget they were ever mortal. To be a god, you need a contrast. You need someone to be nothing, so you can be everything. This was the profound tragedy of the Israelites. The Bani Israel, Pharaoh didn't just want their labor, he wanted to consume their hope. The ancient books and the Bible detail a horror that remains unmatched. The systematic slaughter of every male child born to the weak. Why? Because Pharaoh feared a prophecy. He feared the one who would prove he was just a man. And so he used magic, seer, not for entertainment, but as state propaganda, a tool of mass psychological control. On the grand day of decoration, his magicians used mirrors, quicksilver, and intricate illusions to make ropes writhe like serpents. It was a dizzying sensory overload, designed to make the masses bow, utterly convinced that Pharaoh was the only source of reality. His aura was built on this carefully constructed lie. He cursed the weak, not just to control them, but to prove that he alone held the keys to life and death. But even the most magnificent ego has a limit. The confrontation with Moses wasn't just a battle of miracles. It was the violent deconstruction of a god. The plagues didn't just hurt Egypt. They systematically insulted and humiliated the Egyptian Pantheon. When the Nile turned to blood, the god of the Nile was proven impotent. When darkness fell for days, the mighty sun god, Ra, was silenced. Finally, the Red Sea became the stage for the ultimate unmasking. As the mountains of water stood frozen, Pharaoh charged in, not out of bravery, but out of a delusional, lifelong belief that the sea would recognize its master. But in that freezing, towering corridor of water, the carefully constructed aura vanished. The gold on his chariot, once a symbol of divine power, became a crushing weight. His magic, his priests, his armies, all useless. As the sea collapsed, the Pharaoh, the man who claimed to be the Most High, finally felt the terrifying absolute weight of the very water he believed he owned. As recorded in the ancient texts, in his final seconds choking on the salt water, he tried to repent. But the answer from the heavens was a cold, unyielding reality check. Now, after you have rebelled and been of the corruptors, God made a promise that day. Today we shall save you in your body, that you may be a sign for those who come after you. And here he is. The man who wanted to be a god is now an exhibit. The man who dedicated his entire life to preserving his body, to cheating judgment, has been preserved, not as a king, but as a corpse of warning. He lived long, yes, but he did not become a god. He became an eternal reminder. The higher you build your ego, the harder the earth and the heavens will reclaim you. The pyramids still pierce the sky, monuments to an impossible dream, but the pharaohs are gone. They left us with a chilling question that echoes through every modern empire, every grand ambition, every claim to ultimate power. What good is a throne if it ends in a tomb?